without my glasses. So now I read the John 20, the 24th through 29th verse. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So his other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my fingers where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood amongst them and said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." And then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed."
Amen. In a Peanuts comic strip, Charlie Brown is walking with Lucy, and they're walking home from school, and they have just gotten their standardized test results. And Charlie Brown says to Lucy, Lucy, guess what? I passed all of my standardized tests in the 90th percentile. Isn't that great? Isn't that fantastic? And Lucy, in her typical fashion, shoots poor Charlie Brown down by saying, Really? Unless you show me those test results, I don't believe you." Two women who had never been married, my dad would have called them old maids, we're discussing men in marriage. Which would you prefer in a husband? The one asked the other, "Would you prefer brains, wealth, or appearance?" "Appearance," replied the other, "and the sooner the better." Seeing is believing. One of my favorite movie scenes is from the shark movie Jaws. It's the scene where Brody, Quint, and Hooper go after the killer shark that's been terrorizing the small town of Amity. And they start exchanging stories about their scars, each one trying to make their story bigger and better than the other. Scars tell a story about something that's painful that's happened in our lives. They shout out a message about past surgeries or injuries or even abuses. Sometimes people show their scars so that people can really believe their past pain. And it's what Jesus does for Thomas. Seeing is believing. But what does that say about living our faith? We don't know if Thomas saw Jesus' body after the crucifixion. There is no biblical record that says if he did or didn't. There were eyewitnesses to the scars Jesus bore through the scourges and the thorns. And John even writes about what he personally witnessed. John was there. He is the man who saw it and gave testimony to it. Thomas had probably witnessed other crucifixions. After all, the place of the skull, Golgotha, Calvary, is well known. The Romans skillfully used this horrific form of capital punishment to strike fear into lawbreakers. Thomas knew it and knew what it was like. So as John describes what had happened to Jesus in detail, Thomas and the others continued to hide from the authorities. They grieved, they mourned, and they must have had a deep sense of hopelessness after following Jesus for 3 years. Most people seem to see something before they can believe it. Have you ever felt like you missed something big that everybody else seemed to know or witness? Have you ever felt that it's hard to believe in something that you cannot see, touch, or feel? Have you ever felt that something just could not happen? If you've ever felt like this, then you would be in good company with Thomas. When you're feeling really down or depressed, don't make rash decisions. Don't go out and buy a car. Don't decide to move. Don't decide to get married or decide to get separated or divorced. Give yourself some time to get through those low times before you act impulsively. And so it is with doubts. Don't give in to them. Just recognize them for what they are, doubts. We all have them, but our faith is His Lord had been crucified, his life was in jeopardy, and his hopes were dashed. Maybe that's why he was away from the others, just grieving by himself. Eventually, he returned to his friends, his fellow disciples. God's most faithful servants have usually been among the most doubtful. It's been said that a faith that does not doubt is a dead faith. The mark of a great faith is a great and continuous struggle to get it, to keep it, and to share it. Theologian Paul Tillich described faith as dynamic. If faith becomes stagnant, if it fails to move us, if it fails to open us, if it fails to deepen us, if it fails to better us, then it is no longer faith. Have you ever noticed that when you are in need, that the appearance of someone who is significant in your life, that it can make all the difference? I remember one time my car had broken down, and it was pouring down rain. So I called my dad, and he arrived to help me. Immediately, I felt much better. You may have gone to a party. Think back when you were in those college days, or in those young 20s. So you went to that party. You thought you were going to be safe, but somehow or another, the party got out of control. So you call a family member. Maybe you call that older sister to come and pick you up, or that older brother. And you're really glad that they're there. You're home all alone, and the storm is super scary. So you ring up a friend, and they come over, and soon your fears are gone. The mere appearance of someone who is significant makes all the difference. Which is exactly what we see happening on the actions of Jesus after his resurrection. July 6th, 2003. My dad took his last breath, and our family was all gathered together. It was reassuring to be together. Many of you have been at this place where someone you love deeply has died. And after their death, you feel numb. You feel heartbroken. Death is hard, even for those of us who believe. And I believe this is what Thomas and the disciples felt after Jesus' death. God, who cares so much, that he takes that extra time to reveal himself to us, even in those times when we may not sense it or deserve it, or even recognize it. Jesus goes out of his way to show himself. Jesus, the risen Christ, to Thomas. Thomas loves Jesus. Thomas believes in Jesus. Thomas is the only disciple in John's Gospel who indicates his willingness to die with Jesus. But in today's scripture, Thomas isn't there when Jesus comes to the disciples after his resurrection, when his friends tell him, "Hey, Jesus showed up last week and you weren't here, you missed it." We're not sure where Thomas was, why he was AWOL. Maybe he just wasn't in the mood to be with his friends. Maybe he just wanted to be alone in his sorrow. Have you ever felt like that? You go through a sad time in your life or a difficult time, and you just want to be alone. You don't feel like going to church. You don't feel like being with your friends. You see the glass as half empty rather than half full. Your friend says good morning to you, and you respond, "What's so good about it?" The idea of believing is important to the writer John. Immediately following this story, we have what most scholars believe to be the original ending of the gospel. But these things are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Believing is at the heart of John's gospel. It's why God sent Jesus to us, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. For John, to believe is about having a relationship. Always a verb, never a noun. Believing for John is a statement abiding in Christ. For Thomas to believe in Jesus means that Thomas abides in relationship with Christ, as do we. Thomas makes a request, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. But did you notice that Thomas didn't actually need to touch the wounds? He sees Jesus, he hears Jesus, and Thomas knows and says, my Lord and my God. The Word became flesh, and the flesh became Word. And this is the moment of Thomas's conversion from unbelief to belief. There's a song called El Roy, the God who sees. And the song is centered around the theme that we serve a God who sees us and does everything to meet our needs. The lyrics of the song go something like this. I'm the God who sees. I'm the God who sees you. I'm the God who sees you in the wilderness, sees you in your brokenness. When you're feeling lonely, I'm the God who sees in the desert places, in your empty spaces. I'm the God who sees. I'm nearer than you dare believe. Here in the very air you breathe. I'm the God who sees you. The Gospel of John tells us that the disciples were still having struggles with fear and anxiety. Most Bible scholars believe that the disciples at this time were meeting secretly in the city of Jerusalem, either in a private home or meeting house. They were focused on finding a place that was safe and secure. They were together with the doors locked. They were afraid for their lives as they believed that those in authority still wanted to arrest them and perhaps even put them to death. They certainly were afraid of sharing their faith. What about you? What about us here at Taylor Lake Christian Church? Are we afraid of sharing our faith? Are we afraid of not knowing what to say? Fear of saying the wrong thing? Fear of sharing the gospel with nothing happening? Do we take opportunities to tell disciple stories about Jesus? Or are we like those first disciples, not understanding that a new day has arrived? Do we live by faith in our daily lives? As we read some of the scriptures surrounding the story, we recognize that it wasn't just Thomas that doubted. Many of the people were struggling with the very same doubt. In the first 3 Gospels, we're told absolutely nothing about Thomas. He's just a name in a list of disciples, a faceless man among the 12. It's in John's Gospel that he emerges with this distinct personality. But then there are only 155 words about him. People who doubt or question are sometimes called Doubting Thomas. But if we're going to call him Doubting Thomas, then maybe we need to think about all the rest of the disciples and labeling them in the same manner. Maybe we need to talk about doubting Matthew or doubting Andrew or doubting Bartholomew. Certainly we need to speak of doubting Judas and doubting Peter. And should we add doubting to our name? Yet actually, according to the account in John's Gospel, Thomas is one of the most faithful disciples and one of the most passionate about following Jesus. Writer Frederick Bruckner put it this way: if you don't have doubts, you're either kidding yourself or asleep. Doubts are the ants in the pants by faith. They keep faith alive and moving. Doubt is one of God's most effective tools for producing men and women of faith. Being a doubting Thomas and questioning life is not a bad thing. When we ask ourselves difficult questions, we get those answers that can deepen our faith and provide us with tools that we need to move to a more purposeful life and a closer relationship with Christ and with God. We can learn a valuable lesson from Thomas. All of us at one time in our lives or others have had doubts, questions, and skepticisms. God made us to ask questions, to inquire, to think, to sort things out. And doubt leads to deeper faith. Not long raised from the dead. Doubt is not negative until it leads you to choose not to believe. That's what Jesus was warning Thomas about, saying to him, Thomas, you're acting like a person who has faith, who has no faith. Stop it and believe. And here's a simple faith question for you. How do you get to the place where you have enough faith that you can say, yes, I'm going to teach a Sunday school class, or yes, I'm going to volunteer for vacation Bible school, or yes, I'm going to sing in the choir, even though I can't sing on key? How do you get to the place where you can participate in evangelism or membership or outreach? All you have to do is have a willing heart. Break out of everything that's holding you back. God has begun a good work in you. Live by faith. Blessed are those who believe and have not seen, said Jesus. All of us live every day by faith. We go to sleep assuming by faith that we will wake up. We kiss our loved ones goodbye, having faith that we will see them again. We drive to the grocery store with the faith that we will return home safely with our groceries. We plant our gardens with the faith that they will blossom and bloom. And most crucially, we live every day having faith, knowing that this world is not our home, that we are looking forward to our everlasting home in heaven. As contemporary Christian Chris Tomlin sings, there's a better place waiting for me in heaven. I'm going home where every fear is gone, where I belong. Jesus showed himself to the disciples and said, peace be with you, because it was precisely what they needed. They needed peace amongst their hurting and fearful hearts. Only God knows what you need this morning. My hope and prayer is that Jesus, risen Savior, will bring reality to your faith. We encounter Jesus in the same places the disciples did, in the same time of our greatest need, in the sadness of life when we are hurting, grieving, confused, or troubled. We encounter Jesus, the risen Christ, when we lock everyone else out because we just don't know how we can continue on because we're so scared that the whole world is against us or that no one really cares. We might not know Jesus in a physical sense as Thomas and the other disciples did, but deep within our spiritual being, the presence of Christ can still be a reality to us, a reality in us. We know Jesus, and we experience him without tangible signs. That vision is not based on our senses, but on the unseen reality of a living Lord. Easter is an empty tomb, not empty promises. Our focus has changed. It is not on death, but on life. There is a future. There is hope. The resurrection is central to our Christian faith. The resurrection really did happen. The events of Easter changed history and changed our destiny. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That's you. That's me. So let's go forward and live by faith.